A quiet ride to Willow Creek. The journey to Willow Creek unfolded with only the cadence of Buck's hooves and the wind's desolate whisper through the parched fields for company. Dusty kept his gaze pinned to the distant horizon, where the parched land kissed the cerulean sky. He usually relished these solitary rides, finding solace in the open space that allowed his thoughts to wander freely. But today, a gnawing disquiet coiled in his stomach. He couldn't dismiss the foreboding. Willow Creek Ranch had been spoken of as a place that produced steadfast, dependable horses. Buck, his loyal companion, was showing his age, and Dusty needed a younger replacement to keep his modest ranch afloat. The widow Henderson, on the edge of town, had mentioned that Jebediah Blackwood, the owner, was considering selling. Nearing the crest of a low hill, Willow Creek Ranch materialized, or rather, its skeletal remains did. The main house stood etched against the skyline, its once vibrant paint now flaking like sun-scorched skin. The porch sagged precariously, and empty window sockets stared back like hollow eyes. A dilapidated sign, nearly illegible, swung precariously near the entrance. Willow Creek Ranch. Fine horses bred here. The boast seemed a cruel jest in the face of such utter ruin. Dusty urged Buck forward, the silence growing oppressive with each stride. A thicket of weeds choked the path to the house, their stubborn growth a testament to years of neglect. The air hung stagnant, heavy with the scent of sun-baked earth and decay. No clucking chickens scratched in the yard. No welcoming barks echoed through the air. It felt utterly deserted, left to the ravages of time and weather. He dismounted before the house, the sharp crunch of his boots on the gravel shattering the stillness. He paused, his hand hovering over the pommel of his saddle. Something was deeply amiss. He'd anticipated a working ranch, perhaps a little run down, but this transcended neglect. This felt like outright abandonment. Dusty tethered Buck to a crumbling porch post, the horse shifting nervously. He mounted the steps, the timbers protesting under his weight, and reached for the door. It stood slightly ajar, offering a glimpse into a dark, silent abyss. He knocked, the sound reverberating in the heavy air. "Hello," he called, his voice swallowed by the emptiness. "Mr. Blackwood? Anyone home?" Only silence answered. He pushed the door wider, peering into the gloom. Dust motes swirled in the sunbeams, slicing through the darkness, illuminating faded floral wallpaper and scattered belongings. The air inside reeked of mildew and disuse. It was as if the occupants had fled in haste or been driven out. Dusty crossed the threshold, his boots sinking into the grime-covered floorboards. He moved warily through the house, examining each room. The kitchen was a chaotic tableau, dishes piled high in the sink, spoiled food festering on the table. The bedrooms were in disarray, drawers yanked open, clothing strewn across the floor. Someone had clearly been searching for something, and their search had been brutal. But he found no one. An oppressive sense of dread settled upon him, thicker than the airborne dust. He retreated from the house, a knot of worry constricting his chest. If Blackwood wasn't here, where could he be? And what catastrophe had befallen this place? He turned his attention to the barn, a large, dilapidated structure standing a short distance away. It echoed the house's state of decay, its roof bowing, its walls bearing the scars of time and the elements. The massive double doors stood partway open, one hanging askew on its hinges. A low, mournful groan emanated from within, as if the building itself was lamenting its fate. Dusty approached the barn, his hand instinctively drifting toward the Colt Peacemaker at his hip. The silence was even more profound here, broken only by the rhythmic groan of the door and the rustling of the wind in the dry grasses. He halted at the entrance, his senses heightened. The air inside carried the scent of hay and horses, but beneath it he detected a faint, acrid tang he couldn't identify. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The barn's interior was shrouded in gloom, with only slivers of light penetrating through cracks in the walls and roof. Stalls lined both sides, mostly empty. He surveyed the space, his eyes gradually adjusting to the dimness. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, barely discernible above the creaking of the door. It seemed to originate from the far end of the barn, from within a stall, cloaked in deep shadow. Dusty edged slowly toward the sound, his heart pounding in his ears. He strained his eyes, peering into the darkness. The whimper came again, slightly louder this time, followed by a suppressed sob. It was unmistakably coming from a stall. Dusty reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and pushed the stall door open a little wider. The sight that greeted him sent a shiver of ice through his veins. The secret in the stall. Dusty eased into the barn, the heavy timber door groaning a mournful protest as he slid it open. Dust motes danced in the faint light, filtering through cracks in the weathered planks, painting ephemeral patterns on the hay-strewn floor. The air hung thick with the scent of dried grass, manure, and something else, a metallic tang that pricked at his nostrils. He kept his hand near the grip of his revolver, his senses on high alert. The whimper came again, a fragile thread of sound barely audible above the creaks and groans of the old structure. It emanated from the far end of the barn, from the last stall shrouded in the deepest shadows. Dusty moved cautiously, his boots muffled by the thick layer of straw. Each step echoed in the oppressive silence, amplifying the tension that coiled tighter in his gut. He reached the stall and peered into the gloom. At first, he saw nothing but the rough-hewn planks of the enclosure. Then his eyes adjusted, and he made out a figure huddled in the corner, bound and gagged. A young woman. Her eyes, wide and filled with terror, met his. Dusty's breath hitched. He fumbled with the latch, his calloused fingers clumsy with adrenaline. The gate swung inward, revealing her fully in the dim light. She was petite, with dark hair matted against her forehead. Her wrists were bound tightly with rope, and a dirty rag was stuffed in her mouth. He recognized her instantly. Lily Mae Thompson, Jebediah's daughter. He knelt beside her, his face etched with concern. "Lily Mae? It's Dusty Rivers. I'm here to help." He quickly untied the gag, tossing the soiled cloth aside. Lily Mae gasped, sucking in air like a drowning woman. Her eyes darted around, fear still clinging to her like a shroud. "They're gone for now," she rasped, her voice hoarse. "But they'll be back." Dusty worked swiftly to untie her wrists. The rope had chafed her skin raw, leaving angry red welts. "Who, Lily Mae? Who did this?" She winced as he freed her hands, rubbing her wrists to restore circulation. "Bandits, they came tonight, looking for something. Pa wouldn't tell them." "What were they looking for?" Dusty asked, his voice low and urgent. Lily Mae shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know. He wouldn't say. They ransacked the house, roughed him up bad. Then they took me. Said they'd keep me until he told them what they wanted." Dusty's jaw tightened. He helped her to her feet, steadying her as she swayed. "Where's your pa now, Lily Mae?" "They took him with them. Said they were going to make him talk." Her voice broke, and she clung to Dusty's arm, her body trembling. "Please, you have to help him. They'll kill him if he doesn't tell them." "Where did they take him?" Dusty asked again, his voice a soothing balm against her fear. Lily Mae swallowed hard, trying to compose herself. "To the old Blackwood mine. About half a day's ride north of here. They're using it as a hideout. I heard them talking." The Blackwood mine. Dusty knew the place. A desolate, abandoned scar on the landscape, riddled with treacherous tunnels and shadowed by a grim history. A perfect place for outlaws to hide. "How did you get away?" Dusty asked, his eyes scanning the barn, still wary of unseen threats. "They left me here. Said they'd be back for me, after Pa talked." She shuddered. "I don't know why they didn't just, Dusty didn't press her. He could imagine the terror she'd endured. "We need to get you someplace safe, Lily Mae. Then we'll go after your pa." He led her out of the stall and into the main part of the barn, away from the shadows. The weak sunlight seemed to revive her a little. "I can't leave him, Dusty. I have to help." Her voice, though still shaky, held a newfound determination. "I know the trails around the mine. I can help you find them." Dusty studied her face. He saw the fear, but he also saw a spark of resilience, a stubborn refusal to be a victim. He knew he couldn't leave her behind, not just because it wasn't in his nature, but because she might be their only hope of finding Jebediah in time. He nodded slowly. All right, Lily May, we'll go together, but you have to listen to me. This is going to be dangerous. She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resolve. I will. Just promise me you'll bring him back. I promise I'll do everything I can, Dusty said, his voice firm. He knew promises were dangerous things, especially in this kind of situation. But looking into her eyes, he couldn't say anything less. The metallic tang in the air seemed to intensify, a grim reminder of the violence that had stained this place. Dusty knew they had no time to waste. Jebediah Blackwood's life, and perhaps their own, hung in the balance. A promise of rescue. My word on it. Lily May, Dusty rumbled, his deep voice a vibration in the barn's quietude. I'm getting you out of this. And those lowlifes will pay. The words, unvarnished and direct, carried the weight of granite, mirroring the solid earth and time-worn timbers around them. A vow, born in the crucible of terror, and Lily May seized upon it, a drowning woman grabbing driftwood. He knelt, calloused hands surprisingly tender as he approached the knotted ropes biting into her wrists. Raw welts, crimson against pale skin, marked her delicate limbs. Easy does it, he soothed, brow crinkled. With focused gentleness, he eased the bindings, preventing further distress. The air hung thick with hay and equine musk, yet beneath it, Dusty discerned the sharp, acrid scent of Lily May's terror. At last, the ropes slackened and fell away, and she inhaled sharply, rotating aching fingers. Thank you, she rasped, voice scratchy. Dusty's light examination of her wrists was nearly a caress. They bound you too damn tight. Need salve. His gaze swept the barn, latching onto a jar of horse liniment. Stings a bit, but it'll mend it faster. Lily May offered a vacant nod, the recent horror still echoing in her eyes. He reached for the gag next. Let's get this off. Carefully, he loosened the fabric, mindful of snagging her hair, and freed her mouth. She choked, gasping for air. Bah! The single word was a raw plea, thick with fear and affection. We'll retrieve him, Lily May. That's a promise, Dusty affirmed, his gaze locking with hers. He knew promises were currency too often devalued, but this one he intended to honor. He had to. The thought of Jebediah Thompson, a man of integrity, suffering at the hands of those heartless marauders was unbearable. Nor could he abandon Lily May to this torment. He rose, his height casting a long, protective shadow. From his saddlebag, he extracted his canteen and offered it. Drink, replenish your strength. Her fingers, trembling slightly, brushed his as she accepted the canteen. She drank deeply, the water sluicing down her dry throat. A trickle escaped, which she wiped away with a shaky hand. Thank you, she managed again, her voice gaining a thread of strength. Dusty studied her, evaluating her, still pale and unsteady, but the water seemed to be reviving her. Think you can walk? He inquired. She nodded weakly, apprehension flickering in her eyes. I believe so. Good. Let's get you inside. Food, rest. Then we strategize our next move. He extended a hand. A moment of hesitation. Then she accepted his grip. His hand clasp was firm, reassuring, and she allowed him to draw her upright. She faltered, and Dusty's hand moved to steady her arm. Easy now, he repeated gently. One step at a time. Together, they emerged from the dim confines of the barn into the golden light of late afternoon. The air, redolent with wildflowers and sage, offered a stark contrast to the barn's darkness. Lily May inhaled deeply, as if drawing courage itself into her lungs. As they progressed toward the house, Dusty's eyes constantly swept the surrounding fields, searching the horizon for any sign of the perpetrators. He knew they wouldn't simply vanish. They'd resurface, and he'd be ready for them. But for now, his focus remained on Lily May. He'd given his word, and he lived by it. He would shield her, and he would rescue her father. He wasn't certain how he'd accomplish it, but he would find a way. He always did. Whispers of a stagecoach robbery. Dusty pushed open the splintered door of the ranch house, the hinges groaning in protest. Lily May clung to his arm, her knuckles white. The air inside was thick with dust and the lingering scent of stale whiskey and something else, something metallic and faintly unpleasant. "Stay close," Dusty murmured, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. He scanned the room, his gaze sweeping over overturned furniture and shattered pottery. The place had been ransacked, but not thoroughly. It felt staged somehow. Lily May coughed, pulling her shawl tighter around her. "What are they looking for?" "We'll find out," Dusty replied, his voice grim. He moved deeper into the room, his boots crunching on shards of glass. The main room was a disaster, but a narrow hallway led to what appeared to be a study or office. He gestured for Lily May to follow, then cautiously edged forward. The office was in slightly better shape than the main room, though papers were scattered across the floor and the drawers of a large oak desk had been pulled open. Dusty knelt, sifting through the debris. He found a ledger filled with neat, precise handwriting detailing cattle sales and expenses. Nothing out of the ordinary. Lily May wandered over to a bookshelf lining one wall. She ran her fingers along the spines, her brow furrowed in concentration. "My father kept his maps here," she said softly. "He loved to explore the territory." Dusty joined her, his eyes scanning the shelves. Several books were missing, leaving empty spaces in the neat rows. He reached into one of the gaps and pulled out a rolled-up piece of parchment. It was tied with a frayed leather cord. He untied the cord and carefully unrolled the parchment. It was a map, crudely drawn but recognizable as the local stagecoach route. A section of the road, near a narrow pass called Devil's Gulch, was marked with a bold, black X. "What does it mean?" Lily May asked, peering over his shoulder. Dusty frowned, his gaze fixed on the marked location. "It means someone's planning something." He noticed a small, almost imperceptible pinprick on the map, right at the X. He angled the map to the light, revealing another marking, a faint circle drawn in what appeared to be dried blood. A chill ran down Lily May's spine. That's not good, is it?" Dusty shook his head. "No, it's not." He carefully re-rolled the map and tucked it into his vest pocket. "Let's see what else we can find." He moved back to the desk, systematically searching through the drawers. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a pile of old invoices, he found a folded piece of paper. It was sealed with a blob of black wax, stamped with an unfamiliar symbol. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper. It was a note, written in a hasty, uneven hand. "Stagecoach leaves Willow Creek Tuesday morning," Dusty read aloud. "Heavy payroll shipment. Meet at Devil's Gulch. Blackwood wants it done quick and quiet. No weaknesses." Lily May gasped. "Blackwood? Scarface Blackwood?" Dusty looked up, his eyes narrowed. "You know him. Everyone knows of him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He's a notorious outlaw. They say he's ruthless." Dusty crumpled the note in his fist, his jaw tight. He picked the wrong stagecoach. He looked at Lily May, his expression hardening. "They were planning to rob the stage, and your father probably knew about it. That's why they took him. They needed to keep him quiet." He stood up, his tall frame radiating a quiet fury. "We need to get to that stagecoach, and we need to find your father." Lily May nodded, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a burning desire to help her father and stop Blackwood's gang. "What do we do?" "We ride," Dusty said, his voice low and resolute. "We ride like hell. The bandits return." The dust hadn't even settled from their hasty departure when they heard them. The unmistakable thud of approaching hooves, growing louder with each passing second, sliced through the afternoon quiet. Dusty stiffened, his hand instinctively moving to the worn handle of his revolver. Lily May, who had been attempting to calm her still shaking hands, gasped, her eyes wide with terror. "They're back," she whispered, the words barely audible. Dusty didn't waste time on questions. He grabbed Lily May's arm, pulling her towards the barn. "Get in," he urged, his voice low and urgent. "Hayloft, now!" He boosted her up, his strong hands firm on her waist. Lily May, fueled by adrenaline, scrambled up the ladder, disappearing into the shadowy space above. Dusty followed close behind, pulling the ladder up after him, a precaution against immediate discovery. They huddled together in the hayloft, the dry, prickly hay scratching at their skin. The scent of sun-baked grass filled their nostrils, a stark contrast to the fear tightening in their chests. Below, the sound of horses grew deafening as they entered the yard. Dusty risked a peek through a gap in the wooden planks. He counted 5 horses, rough-looking men, their faces obscured by wide-brimmed hats and bandanas, dismounted. And then he saw him, Silas Scarface Blackwood. The jagged scar that bisected his left cheek was even more prominent in the harsh sunlight, a grim reminder of his brutality. He moved with a predatory grace, his eyes scanning the surroundings with unnerving intensity. Blackwood barked an order, his voice raspy and laced with menace. "Check the house. Make sure the old man didn't leave anything behind." 2 of the bandits headed towards the ransacked house, their heavy boots crunching on a gravel path. Blackwood, along with the other 2, sauntered towards the barn. Dusty felt Lily May tremble beside him. He put a reassuring arm around her, his grip firm and protective. The barn door creaked open, flooding the interior with light. Dusty and Lily May held their breath, praying they wouldn't be discovered. "Anything here, Silas?" one of the bandits called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Blackwood grunted in response. "Just hay and dust. Check the stalls. See if the old man was hiding anything." The bandits began their search, kicking at loose boards and rummaging through the abandoned stalls. Dusty watched through the crack, his senses on high alert. He noticed Blackwood pacing restlessly, his gaze constantly shifting, as if he sensed something was amiss. "Find anything, Jed?" Blackwood asked, his voice sharper now. "Just some old tack, Silas. Nothing of value." The bandit, presumably Jed, replied. Blackwood stopped pacing and stared up into the hayloft, his eyes narrowed. Dusty's heart pounded in his chest. Did he know they were there? Was it just a hunch? "Something's not right," Blackwood muttered, more to himself than to his men. He wouldn't just leave, not without a fight. He walked slowly towards the center of the barn, his boots thudding on the wooden floor. He paused directly beneath the hayloft, his gaze fixed on the rough-hewn planks above. "Maybe he had help," Blackwood said, his voice laced with suspicion. "Someone who knew about the stagecoach." Lily May flinched, her hand gripping Dusty's arm tightly. He squeezed her hand in return, a silent promise of protection. Blackwood reached out and ran his hand along one of the support beams, his fingers tracing the grain of the wood. "Check the loft," he ordered, his voice cold and decisive. "See if our little birds have flown the coop." The 2 bandits exchanged glances. Then one of them moved towards the empty space where the ladder should have been. A daring plan. The scent of dry hay filled Dusty's nostrils, doing little to calm the frantic drumming of his heart. Below, the gruff voices of Blackwood's gang echoed through the barn, punctuated by the restless shifting of their horses. He risked a peek through the gaps in the loft floorboards, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. Blackwood stood in the center of the barn, a menacing figure with his scarred face contorted in a perpetual snarl. "Someone help them escape," Blackwood growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the wooden beams. "And I am to find out who." Lily May, huddled beside Dusty, trembled. He put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, offering a silent promise of protection. One of the bandits, a lanky man with a nervous twitch, spoke up. "You think it was Old Man Withers, Scarface? He always seemed a bit soft." Blackwood spat on the ground. "Withers? He's got the backbone of a wet noodle. No, someone with grit. Someone who knows this land." He paused, his gaze sweeping the barn. Maybe even someone who was looking to buy a horse. Dusty felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They were getting close. Too close. "What about the stagecoach, boss?" another bandit asked, his voice thick with impatience. "We still hitting it tomorrow?" Blackwood's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Damn right we are. Jebediah Thompson's got a shipment of gold coming through Devil's Gulch. We'll be waiting for him, and anyone else who dares to cross us." Lily May gasped softly. "He's really going to rob my father." Dusty squeezed her shoulder again. He could almost taste the metallic tang of fear in the air. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. He listened intently as the bandits continued to discuss their strategy, piecing together their movements and weaknesses. They planned to leave at dawn, positioning themselves on the high ground overlooking Devil's Gulch, a narrow pass known for its treacherous terrain. "We'll split into two groups," Blackwood explained. "Half of US will block the road. The other half will circle around and cut off their escape." The bandits chuckled, their greed palpable even from above. Dusty noticed their horses were tethered loosely, ready for a quick departure. An idea, risky and audacious, began to form in his mind. Blackwood, seemingly satisfied with his planning, turned to one of his men. "Ryder, check the perimeter again. Make sure no one's lurking about." Ryder, a hulking brute with a rifle slung over his shoulder, nodded and started towards the barn door. "Now," Dusty whispered urgently, pulling Lily May closer. He pressed his lips to her ear, his voice barely audible above the creaking of the barn. "We're going to stop them. Tonight." Lily May looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "How?" "They're armed, and there's so many of them." "We'll use their own greed against them," Dusty replied, his voice firm despite the danger. "Their horses are their strength. We take that away, and they're nothing but sitting ducks." He outlined his plan, a daring scheme that relied on stealth, ingenuity, and a healthy dose of luck. He would slip out of the barn under cover of darkness and disable their horses, hamstringing them just enough to render them useless for the stagecoach robbery. It was a dangerous move, one that could get them killed if they were caught. Lily May listened intently, her initial fear slowly giving way to a steely resolve. "But what about you? What they catch you?" "I'll be careful," Dusty assured her, though he knew the odds were stacked against him. "You stay here, hidden. If things go south, you need to get to town and alert the sheriff." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "Can you do that?" Lily May nodded, her chin held high. "Yes, I can." Dusty felt a surge of admiration for the young woman. She had been through so much, yet her spirit remained unbroken. He knew he couldn't leave her here alone for too long. "All right," he said, his voice low and determined. "Let's get to work. Fire and fury." The moon, a sliver of bone in the inky sky, cast long, distorted shadows across the barnyard. Dusty pressed himself against the rough-hewn planks of the barn wall, listening. The bandits' snores, a chorus of guttural rattles, emanated from the open doorway of the bunkhouse. He glanced back at Lily May, a pale silhouette in the loft opening. She gave him a small, shaky nod. It was time. He slipped out, a wraith moving through the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of hay and manure, a familiar scent that strangely comforted him. He moved towards the corral, where the bandits' horses stood, restless and shifting. They were big, mean-looking animals, likely stolen themselves. Dusty carried a small, sharp knife he'd found tucked in his saddlebag. He worked quickly, efficiently. He didn't want to hurt the beasts, just slow them down. He carefully sliced through the leather hobbles he'd fashioned from discarded rope, securing them to the horse's forelegs. Each snort and stamp of hooves sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He whispered soothing words, hoping to calm their unease. "Easy now, girl. Just a little inconvenience." He hobbled 3 horses, then 4. The 5th horse, a massive black stallion, whinnied nervously and tried to rear. Dusty grabbed its muzzle, his hand firm but gentle. "Chill," he breathed. "Don't you go and ruin everything now." He finished the job, the stallion's hot breath puffing against his hand. He moved back into the shadows, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lily May was relying on him. Jebediah Thompson was relying on him. Back at the barn, Lily May took a deep breath. The kerosene lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. She held the small oil-soaked rag she'd prepared, her hand trembling. It felt like a lifetime since she'd last felt safe. She crept out of the barn and around to the back of the chicken coop. The chickens, sensing her presence, stirred and clucked softly. She felt a pang of guilt, but she knew this had to be done. She placed the rag amongst the dry straw and tinder that littered the ground, struck a match against the barn wall, and dropped it. The flames sputtered, then caught. A small, orange tongue licked at the straw, quickly growing into a hungry blaze. Lily Mae backed away, the heat searing her face. Smoke billowed into the night air. Inside the bunkhouse, a bandit yelled, "Fire!" Chaos erupted. The snores turned into shouts, curses, and the scrambling of boots. The bandits, half asleep and disoriented, stumbled out of the bunkhouse, their eyes wide with panic. "The chickens," one yelled, pointing at the rapidly growing flames. "They'll all be roasted." The bandits rushed towards the chicken coop, grabbing buckets and frantically splashing water on the flames. They formed a disorganized line, passing buckets from the well, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight. Dusty watched from the shadows, a grim satisfaction washing over him. The diversion was working. All except for one. Silas Scarface Blackwood stood apart from the others, his scarred face etched with suspicion. He scanned the barnyard, his eyes narrowed. He didn't seem concerned about the chickens. He was looking for something or someone. He slowly turned his gaze towards the barn, his eyes piercing the darkness. Dusty ducked deeper into the shadows, holding his breath. Blackwood's eyes lingered on the loft opening for a long moment. Then he began to walk towards the barn, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Dusty knew he had to move, and fast. Showdown at the well. Blackwood moved with a predator's grace, his scarred face illuminated by the flickering light of the distant chicken coop fire. The acrid smell of burning feathers stung Dusty's nostrils as he limped from the shadows of the stable, positioning himself between Blackwood and the barn door. "Evening, friend," Dusty rasped, his hand hovering near the worn handle of his revolver. The dryness in his throat felt like swallowing sand. He wasn't a gunslinger, never had been. But he'd be damned if he let that monster get to Lily Mae. Blackwood stopped, his eyes narrowed, raking over Dusty's figure. "You, the limping rancher. What's your business here?" "Just passing through," Dusty lied, his gaze unwavering. "Heard some commotion." Blackwood chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent a shiver down Dusty's spine. "Commotion, you say? Seems like someone's having a bit of trouble keeping their chickens in line." He took a step closer, the lantern light glinting off the silver scar that bisected his cheek. "Or perhaps someone's trying to distract us." Dusty knew the game was up. He drew his revolver, the metallic click echoing in the stillness of the night. "That depends on what you're distracting folks from." Blackwood's own gun materialized in his hand with unsettling speed. "You're a fool to stand against me, old man. This ain't your fight." "Maybe not," Dusty admitted, his voice surprisingly steady. "But it's my choice." The air crackled with tension. Blackwood's eyes, hard and cold as granite, never left Dusty's. The only sound was the crackling of the flames from the chicken coop. Then Blackwood lunged. Dusty sidestepped, narrowly avoiding Blackwood's initial strike. The bandit leader was fast, his movements surprisingly agile for a man of his size. Dusty fired, the shot echoing through the night. Blackwood grunted, clutching his shoulder, but didn't falter. He roared, a sound of pure rage, and came at Dusty again, a whirlwind of fists and fury. Dusty, hampered by his injured leg, was forced onto the defensive. He blocked a punch with his forearm, the force of the blow sending a jolt of pain up his limb. He stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Blackwood pressed his advantage, driving Dusty towards the old water well. Just as Blackwood was about to deliver a knockout blow, a rock whizzed past Dusty's head and struck Blackwood squarely on the temple. He staggered, momentarily disoriented. Dusty looked towards a barn. Lily Mae stood silhouetted in the doorway, her eyes blazing with defiance. She had a handful of rocks clutched in her hands, her small frame trembling but resolute. "Get out of here, Lily Mae!" Dusty yelled, but she didn't move. Seeing their leader momentarily stunned, the other two bandits started to advance towards Dusty. They were eager to finish the job and claim the bounty on his head. Lily Mae, with a fierce cry, hurled another rock, this time hitting one of the bandits in the face. He roared in pain, clutching his nose. The other bandit hesitated, unsure of what to do. Dusty seized the opportunity. He kicked out, catching Blackwood off balance, and then brought the butt of his revolver down on the bandit's head. Blackwood crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Turning his attention to the remaining bandits, Dusty saw that Lily May, despite her fear, was holding her own. She was dodging and weaving, pelting them with rocks, keeping them at bay. He knew he had to end this quickly. He charged towards the bandits, firing his revolver. One bandit went down, clutching his leg. The other, seeing his comrades fall, turned and fled into the darkness. Dusty stood there, panting, his body aching, his heart pounding in his chest. The night air was thick with the smell of smoke and gunpowder. He looked at Lily May, her face smudged with dirt and soot, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and triumph. "You all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Lily May nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Dusty." "We ain't out of the woods yet," Dusty said, glancing at the unconscious Blackwood. "But we're one step closer." He knew they couldn't stay here. Reinforcements would surely come. They needed to move, and fast. The stagecoach and Jebediah were still waiting. Justice and gratitude. The reek of scorched timbers stung Dusty's nostrils, a bitter memento of the averted catastrophe. Knuckles aching, he observed Blackwood, still dazed but clearly scheming, as the townsfolk bound him with a fervor usually reserved for holiday poultry. Deputy Hank Miller, his face a roadmap of relief and burgeoning self-importance, barked instructions, his voice cracking with unexpected command. "Everyone give him space. Let's secure this area. Check the livestock." A distant siren keened, a promise of order slicing through the pandemonium. Sheriff Brody arrived in a swirl of dust, his posse a grim escort. His gaze swept across the scene. The barn's blackened skeleton, the captive outlaws, the anxious huddle of townspeople with practiced assessment. "In God's name." "Miller, report." Brody's usual gravelly tone held an edge of steel. "Stage hold up, Sheriff." "Blackwood's gang. They took Miss Lily May." Dusty Rivers and the townsfolk stopped them cold. Hank puffed up, momentarily basking in the sheriff's scrutiny. Brody's gaze softened as it found Lily May, clinging to Martha Thompson, her mother. Relief flooded his features, swiftly masked by professional severity. "Miller, lock these snakeskins up. Double the guard. I want every detail. Don't leave anything out." He turned to Dusty, his expression an enigma. "Rivers. My office." Dusty steeled himself. Saving the town didn't erase his past. He was still a wanted man. Brody steered him aside, beyond the townsfolk's earshot. "Rivers, you're aware of your fugitive status." It wasn't a question, but a statement. "Sheriff, I didn't initiate any of this. I just—" Dusty paused, searching for the right justification. "I did what had to be done." Brody scrutinized him, his eyes narrowed to slits. "Appears to me, Rivers, you did one hell of a job, but the law remains. I'll require a statement. Full cooperation." Dusty gave a slow nod. "You'll have it, Sheriff." The paperwork felt endless, the questions relentless, but Dusty answered them all with careful precision, recounting the recent events. He glossed over particular incidents, secrets best left untouched. His freedom, he knew, dangled by a fragile cord, a delicate balance between justice and adherence to the law. Finally, Brody closed the file, a sigh escaping his lips. "Rivers, you're free to go. For the moment. Stay put." Dusty didn't challenge the order. He understood he couldn't elude the long arm of the law indefinitely. But for now, he had a commitment to honor. He located Lily May and Martha Thompson near the general store, encircled by well-wishers. Lily May's complexion remained pale, but her eyes sparked with newfound fortitude. Martha's brow was furrowed with apprehension, yet radiant with gratitude. As Dusty drew near, the crowd gave way, their murmurs of praise cascading over him. A wave of discomfort warmed his neck. He wasn't accustomed to such attention. "Dusty," Martha uttered, her voice thick with emotion. She reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "I can't express our gratitude. You rescued my Lily. You rescued all of us." Lily May moved forward, embracing Dusty tightly. "Thank you, Dusty. Thank you for not giving up on us." Dusty awkwardly patted her back, at a loss for words. Just glad I could be of assistance, ma'am. He turned to Martha. She's a courageous young woman. Martha affirmed, tears glistening in her eyes. Indeed she is. And so are you. She delved into her purse and produced a small, exquisitely carved wooden horse. Lily May crafted this for her father before everything. She wishes for you to have it. Lily May bashfully extended the horse. It's for you, for being a hero. Dusty hesitated, then gingerly accepted the figurine. Though diminutive, barely the size of his thumb, the artistry was striking. He could almost feel the wood's warmth through his calloused skin. Thank you, Lily May. It's something I will always cherish. The townspeople continued to heap accolades upon them, offering sustenance, libations, and heartfelt thanks. Even Jebediah, recovered from his ordeal, ambled over to clasp Dusty's hand, his gaze alight with admiration. As twilight descended, painting elongated shadows across the town, Dusty found himself alone near the livery, the wooden horse nestled in his palm. The initial surge of adrenaline had subsided, leaving him exhausted and aching. He remained a fugitive, pursued by the law. Yet for the first instance in recent memory, he felt a glimmer of hope ignite within him. He had performed an act of kindness, an act of significance. He surveyed the town, the faces of those he had aided, and a sense of tranquility enveloped him. He might be unable to rewrite his history, but perhaps, just perhaps, he could sculpt a different destiny. A future where justice and gratitude were not merely empty pronouncements, but a guiding principle.